Hi, Jefe, and thanks for watching my video. Yours was pretty good. There were a couple of obvious new mistakes that I'm gonna try to help you correct, but most of it was actually pretty good compared to the other games of this nature. And I've really been waiting since Simulator Omnibus or whatever his name was stopped doing those war simulations. So please continue doing this and please continue learning about how to do this. There are a couple of things like I posted that are clear errors in this thing. You didn't show things like timestamps, how long the war's been going on. You didn't show the entire regional map, so you can see every time you take a picture, you can see the entire region and estimate what's going on. You didn't have a victory scenario for the Western powers or Nordics. And considering the Winter War, the victory was able to delay the Russians long enough for them to sue peace. In this scenario, you had them have a all or nothing scenario, and that seems a little bit weird. And like I said in the comments, I would also add a Western assistance package for uh, the Nordic countries because you can't, considering the Winter War, you can't underestimate the value of the Western aid. It is very relevant to actually surviving. And the aid should increase as long as there's a reasonable chance that the Nordics can defend. But if they start suffering heavy strategic defeats, the aid should start to decrease. And Russia, in this case, I believe shouldn't get aid, but that's up to you. I wouldn't add aid to them because in this scenario, I'm assuming they're the attacker. There are a couple of other things, like I said, that you, for example, you cut the scenario too short. While Finland had Viipuri, I'm gonna try to find the right spot here. Here we go. You can notice that there's 400, 100, and all these other small numbers put together is about 50. That adds up to about 550 military points or whatever. And the entire garrison along this border has at most 300. So if you look at the military history maps of like the Chechen War, for example, you'll notice that a surrounded enemy on friendly terrain is very hard to contain, and they will roam through the countryside for great length and ignore anything resembling the enemy until they reach something resembling safety. And you could also add that the Baltic countries eventually joined the war or something along those lines, like Estonia said on the map. And while the Stockholm, I think Stockholm fell, but Copenhagen survived. And while it's possible that the withdrawing Finnish army, which will get through friendly territory to here in no more than a week, I believe, even that is cutting it long because this is friendly territory that you're going through. It means people will give you gas from automobiles and will give you food from their refrigerators because the invading army doesn't destroy the infrastructure at that time because it takes a long amount of time to burn every single house and to destroy every single car. So at that point, in such a rushed victory scenario, you're gonna see a lot of civilians support an army that is withdrawing to their territory if it's a friendly army. So if you assume that these guys ignore this largest blob and don't go for Helsinki, but withdraw to the north and then to the west and then to Turku and then to Stockholm, you're going to see a massively different war than what you would in this case. And as long as there's a reasonable chance that the Western powers will intervene, they ain't going to surrender because Finland in the Winter War surrendered when the Western powers' aid promises were basically blocked for the third time by Sweden and Norway. And it started to appear like they wouldn't, even if they weren't blocked, come to aid Finland. They would fortify northern Sweden. That is when the Finns basically sued for peace. And because the war had been an action of delay, the Soviets accepted border corrections. In this particular case, you say surrender, which means a complete takeover. That ain't gonna happen. You should probably say something along the lines of sue for peace and something along those lines. And don't mind the Icelandic thing. You can just call it military. Army is perhaps the wrong word, but if you were to call it military, then nobody would mind. And what else? What else? What else? That's about it. I would once again point out that in the end here, you can see here, you can see that Stockholm had a red blob while Copenhagen's red blob is out. So 3 of the 5 Nordic capitals are still free. And the withdrawing Finnish army is most likely to get to Stockholm before the Russians can send another amphibious landing, because amphibious landings and supporting a single port are rather much more difficult than evacuating through a port. So the Finnish army is probably gonna, in its evacuation, take Stockholm, by which time the Russians are maybe around here, and then divert to the north, and the rest of the Scandinavians are gonna form a line roughly here, maybe delay them for one more week, and when their ground army starts to reach towards Oslo and Stockholm, then they'll surrender or sue for peace at the latest. But at that point, they might actually surrender. But my main point is the graphical details. You need to work on those. You also need to do a little bit more research, but not by much. You seem to be doing this quite well. And don't stop this while Finland has an army larger than the entire occupying force that's in Finland, but it's in a single blob in Viipuri. So, don't stop at that point. It seems cheaty. And I really want to see how a well played, well thought out scenario on this engine done by a professional, such as I hope you're, building into, will look like. So, for the public consumption, here is the entire video. Also a typo. There are a few typos. This is the only timestamp in the video. Notice there that the Scandinavian Unified Navy here, the Unified Navy here is stronger than the entire Baltic Fleet, Russian Navy. So you can consider the chances of them being able to do repeated amphibious landings, which require specialized forces, to be quite low. They may be able to throw their entire fleet into it and make one good landing, or perhaps even two, but supporting them against a intensely hostile population that is combined with a fairly good army is going to be difficult, to say the least. And here you see that since both of the navies of the Nordic countries and Russia engaged in proximity to Helsinki, the remaining army has 900 points and it's Nordic, which means that not much of the Russian navy remains at that point. So I can understand them being able to do a few landings afterwards, but being able to supply a bridgehead in Stockholm to make any kind of significant gains towards controlling the city is not likely. And this is a little unlikely, but I'll allow it. It's not something I've never heard of in a Finnish strategy. At this point, there's an army of 400 next to St. Petersburg, while there's another army of 400 in Finland, and there's even an encirclement of Russians close by. These would probably do much the same as these guys. Here's the very large Nordic blob in St. Petersburg and the very insufficient Russian defense on the west. Because while this part is still historically Russian, there's maybe 20 to 50 kilometers to the Finnish part. And once they cross into Finland proper, the Russian army is going to be very hard pressed to follow them, especially due to the very high rate of mechanization and motorization in the Finnish army. So I would estimate that these guys can reach Turku harbor within a week at most. So if these guys are given the order and supported by, you know, what the Swedes can throw at it to keep the harbor open until these guys reach it, it may be doable. Then again, I'm not a military expert, but I have some experience. Copenhagen holds and Stockholm falls, and that's too quick a surrender because it's still a long way south before these guys are in the Nordic capitals. And before they reach Stockholm, that surrounded unit will probably be destroyed. And if these guys manage to withdraw here, then the Russian Navy is basically unable to do a landing because they are quite pushed. And at that point, they can all fortify on the north of the country. It won't win, but it'll not be the point of surrender. In in that point, the Finnish government might surrender, but the military won't. So that was my feedback. I hope you had some fun with it. Thank you for watching.